Welcome to VSB After the Bell. I'm your host, Deanna Chell. With deep gratitude and respect, we are honored to be learning and unlearning on the ancestral and unceded lands of the Hamathquiam, Skohomish Ohomeom, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. The Vancouver School Board is among the most diverse school systems in Canada, with an annual enrollment of approximately 50,000 students from kindergarten to grade 12 and adult education students. Social emotional learning shapes the way students and later adults understand their emotions, navigate social situations, and use behavior to express themselves. But what exactly is social emotional learning, and what does that look like in schools through VSB? Joining me today is District Resource Teacher Deanna Barriera and District Case Manager Behavior Support Sheryl Morris. Thank you both for being here today. And for our listeners, please introduce yourselves and tell us a bit about the work that you do.
Thanks, Gianna. My name is Deanna Barriera, and I am the District's Social and Emotional Resource Teacher. And in my role, I support K-12 school teams with social emotional curriculum, strategies and supports through consultation plans. I also provide professional development on District Pro D Days, as well as individualized school presentations through lunch and learns or before and after school presentations. Lastly, I work with Sheryl, and we directly support our social emotional learning programs.
Thanks, Deanna. So in my role as District Case Manager Behavior Support, I'm responsible for supporting school teams working with students from kindergarten to grade 12 who present with ongoing and significant behavioral and learning needs. I facilitate requests from schools regarding ministry designations for H&R and district program placements. I support the CELC, Excel, which is the Excellence in Social Emotional Learning, Alderwood and Social Development Programs, and I support the Urgent Intervention Student Support Workers that we refer to as UIP SSBs.
So all these acronyms, for listeners who don't know, are essentially specialized programs for students with a designation, otherwise known as students with special needs, and they have been tested and ministry designated.
For the most part, yes, they are H&R, the behavior program designations. Some of our programs like CELC, you do not need a designation to be in the program.
Okay, great. And maybe we can get into that a little bit more. First, let's start off with the basics. What is social emotional learning, and how does it relate to students' learning?
So social emotional learning, so it's also known as SEL, so we'll refer to it as SEL in this podcast. So really, it's an ongoing process of learning skills and understanding ourselves and others by being aware of our emotions, managing our emotions, also being aware of others' emotions, showing empathy and compassion towards others, then also looking outside ourselves and thinking about social awareness. So being aware of others and having different perspectives, goals, strengths, which also then connects to relationship skills and creating those meaningful and supportive relationships with others. Being able to make caring and constructive decisions and using problem-solving skills. So I know that's a lot, but overall, this relates to our students in the district because it is so important to teach these foundational skills that help them not only in school, but also for the rest of their lives.
You know, it's interesting because those characteristics that you describe, to me, they are known as soft skills because when I was growing up in school, it was very academic based, math, English, science. And then it wasn't until university or even when I started working, when you develop these soft skills of learning how to be empathetic, how to understand your colleagues' perspective and work in different environments with different personalities, that social emotional part. So we're teaching kids at a younger age how to use these foundational skills to transfer into the real world.
Exactly. So these are skills that we see that not only in elementary school or high school, post-secondary, these students need to support them in everyday life. And as adults, we're still practicing these skills. They're ongoing.
For sure.
It's not, SEL is not a one and done lesson. It's an ongoing life experience.
And as Deanna said, there are foundations. So they are the foundation which you build your academic skills on. You need those in place to be able to have academic success.
Yeah, I feel like I just kind of had to figure it out as I went into adulthood. So it's great to hear that we're teaching kids with these skills to lay that foundation. So can you give us some examples of supports and resources district staff, such as yourself, use to help promote social emotional learning?
So like I mentioned before, and part of my role is providing school teams with consultation plans. So in my consultation plan, when I work with school teams, I focus on 3 main areas of SEL.
Okay, so let's back it up a little bit. What's a consultation plan and what's a school-based team?
Okay, so a consultation plan for social emotional learning really focuses on, this is when I go into classrooms and I observe the classroom for, about an hour and a half, 2 hours, and see in the classroom what I can recommend for the teacher to provide SEL skills and teach class-wide in the classroom. So really, I look at the 3 main areas. I look at the classroom environment. Is it welcoming? Is it inclusive and engaging for students? And then I look at looking at their integration of SEL into everyday classroom routines. So what that looks like is, do they have brain breaks? So are they taking breaks during the day? Are they practicing mindfulness? Are they having emotional check-ins, so class-wide emotion check-ins with students? Do they provide opportunities for students to work in groups and partners? So those are just a few examples of the integration of SEL into daily routines. And then the last part of my consultation plan, I look at SEL curriculum. So is there a curriculum that can support the students class-wide? So we're lucky in our district to have access to amazing SEL curriculum, such as Mind Up, Second Step, Little Spot series. So having those to recommend and provide for teachers when I see fit, and if they're open to implementing them in their classrooms. I think there was a second part of your question too.
There was, but I have some questions with a follow-up question or a couple of follow-up questions. Yeah. So you talked about a brain break or emotional check-in.
Yeah.
Can you describe what that would look like to a parent who is not in the classroom?
Yeah. So, for example, in my classroom, as a classroom teacher, what I would do is in the morning, my students, I would welcome them into the classroom in the morning. We would practice mindfulness. And then we would have a talking stone and students would pass around the talking stone and share how they're feeling that day and why they're feeling that way. And right away, as a classroom teacher, I knew where my students were at. So really, it was a time for just taking some deep breaths, checking in with my students, and then going from there to seeing how the rest of the day might look for them. So some of my learners, I wouldn't want to push them that day. If they had a really tough morning, then I understood that. And that was a time for me to kind of take a backseat and kind of check in more with them and see how they're doing throughout the day.
And how do you approach some students who may not be as vocal with expressing themselves? Especially the younger ones, they're quite shy and maybe they had a tough morning, but they don't know how to say it.
Yeah, that's actually a really good question because I was in a classroom yesterday doing a morning check-in. And I allow students to pass. So if you don't feel comfortable, I allow you to pass. And again, I'm a guest teacher in their classroom, so I'm not their regular teacher. So they might not feel comfortable with me. And that's when I talk to the teacher and say, okay, this is normal that they do want to say pass because they might not feel as comfortable with me. But if it was my own students and I had that relationship with them, then I would want to check in with them later on, not in front of the other students, not as a group, but then do a further check-in one-on-one with them to see how they are feeling that day. And with my own students, that always worked. Like then I would hear, maybe they did have a tough morning and what was going on. So I think it's always important not just to allow students to pass and let them go on with the day, but also have some extra one-on-one check-ins with those students that might need it.
How do you do that with secondary students?
That's a good question. It could look differently in secondary. Like, there's so many ways to check in that you actually don't even need to do it verbally. You don't need to do it as a class together. Like, I've modeled doing journal check-ins. I model doing, there's technology nowadays, all our students love using technology. So there's different apps and things out there that students could use to also check in that way as well. And there's also peer-to-peer check-in. You can put a timer for 2 minutes in the classroom and say, okay, just have a quick chat, check in with your buddy, your partner next to you, and then we'll start our lesson. So there's different ways that can be modified and changed for different age groups for sure.
You also talked about SEL curriculum. For those who are not educators, they may not be familiar with that. Can you give a concrete example of what that looks like?
Yep. So I'll give an example of Mind Up. And this is a great curriculum that I used as a classroom teacher as well. So Mind Up, it focuses on what in the SEL world we refer to CASEL's framework. So CASEL is an organization that supports social emotional learning. They're very big on supporting social emotional learning resources, so curriculum, school-wide supports for social emotional learning, class-wide supports. So when we look at curriculum, we like research-based curriculum. So has this been implemented in classrooms? Has it been effective? Is there research on it? So Mind Up, for example, there is. And we look at, really it goes by CASEL's framework. So we look at kind of the things I mentioned earlier: self-awareness, social awareness, relationship skills, managing or problem solving, and decision making. So those are kind of some of the areas it focuses on with, if I had visuals, like CASEL's wheel. And then it goes by those skills. So it breaks down the skills in the lessons that they're focusing on. So for example, the first unit is on talking about the brain. So really looking at that self-awareness. What is happening in our brains when, we might have a big emotion? What's going on with the amygdala? And what are the connections being made? Are we able to make the right choices when we're in that state of mind? And if we're not, what are strategies we can use? Mindful breathing. So we know when we breathe mindfully, that's when, we can take a second, our brain connections are taking a pause, and then you can make those right decisions, or you can choose a strategy that might support you to calm down. So that's kind of the first unit. And then it gets into understanding others' emotion, or understanding yourselves and understanding others. So emotions, and then getting into understanding the world. So it gets into the senses, talking about 5 senses, and then it gets into understanding others and showing empathy and compassion towards others. So really, it's hard to explain without the framework, but really a lot of our curriculums focus on CASEL's framework, and it starts with ourselves, understanding ourselves, and then it kind of goes out into understanding others.
So then, speaking of social emotional learning, I know we also have a social emotional learning center, commonly referred to as SELC. What is the center and what does it do?
So SELC is a program that provides support for primary students to strengthen their social, emotional, and behavioral skills. The center provides a short-term, so it's usually like one school term, opportunity where students learn strategies in self-regulation, social skills, executive functioning, and self-advocacy. So many of the curriculums and skills that Deanna talked about are incorporated into the SELC program. We have 2 programs, SELC, which is half-day, and SELC Plus, which is our full-day program. So Deanna and I go out to do classroom observations to see potential candidates. We put together cohorts. We try to balance students out in terms of their grades, homeschool locations, because we don't want students traveling too long on the bus, and thinking about the whole group dynamic. SELC and SELC Plus are both 16 weeks. They are a small group setting, maximum of 10 students each. The SELC is the half day. So students are in their home schools in the morning and then go to the SELC program for the afternoon. And we have 2 of those programs in the district. SELC Plus is our full day. So students leave their home school for 16 weeks and then come back. And during this time, especially in the SELC program, the SELC team goes into the home schools in the morning and helps support the classrooms from which the students come from. There's ongoing communication and support between the SELC and SELC Plus and the home schools during the cohorts. So Deanna and I support and work together to support the program, the staff, and the students in the SELC program.
So do the students get picked up at their home school and then there's a school bus?
So for the half day, yes, they get picked up just before lunch and then brought home at the end of the day. For the full day, they're actually picked up at home and then brought home at the end of the day.
When might a school consider one for a SELC program? And could parents or families apply to be part of the SELC program for their child?
Good question. So it's really at the school levels. That's where it starts. So rather than families requesting the program, it's actually the teachers, like I mentioned earlier, the school team. So maybe classroom teacher, the resource teacher, counselor, principal, vice principal are all involved. And then it's really when strategies are not working already in the classroom. So class-wide SEL strategies and supports and curriculum, and then individualized ones also. So the student still needs more time to learn these strategies and supports. And that's when we think that, or the team would think that this could be a possible program that would fit the student. And after that is when the school team would reach out to parents to maybe bring it up, talk about SELC, share what SELC is, and why they think that the student might be a good fit. And that's when the family's brought into the conversation after the school-based team has decided that.
And do these students usually have a designation? I know, Sheryl, you mentioned.
Not particularly. They can, but because they're in grades 1 to 3, a lot of students do not get a designation till later on. But no, you do not have to have one to be in SELC or SELC Plus program.
I mean, could this be seen as to parents as, my child is really acting up in school, so they need to go to this specialized program? How does that make families feel, or how does that make the kid feel?
We try and support the family and have discussions all along the way. Parent and school communication is always ongoing. And when we think that SELC is an option, parents are brought into those discussions. There's an open house before the student is accepted into the program, so they can see the program and talk to the program team and learn more about it and make their decision if it would be a good fit for their child. There's also a lot of strategies and language and tools that are introduced through the program that parents can use at home.
Okay. And having an introduction to SELC or potentially being recommended to SELC, would this be a surprise to families, or would it be something where there's been multiple visits to the principal's office or to multiple conversations with parents, and then this kind of is leading up to the SELC program?
The latter, usually the conversations and communication is throughout the year is brought up, and that the student is struggling. It can be as simple as a student is anxious, or maybe they are not feeling comfortable with other students in the group, or that they just have struggles and they've tried everything in the classroom and they need a little bit more intervention.
So what does the actual program look like? You take the kid and you bring them to the location, which where is SELC?
So the 2 half-day programs are at Brock and Norquay. The full day is at Waverley, and it's set up just like a classroom would be, but there are, of course, lots of social emotional supports and tools and resources. They come in, they do their emotional check-in in the morning, and then the program all day or the half day is really focused on developing the social emotional skills. And they use a lot of the curriculums Deanna talked about and a lot of the tools, and they form friendships with the new kids in the program, and they are especially in the half day, go back to their homeschool in the mornings, and the SELC team goes in and helps develop those strategies with the whole class.
Right. So they're still maintaining a connection with their homeschool while also making new friends. And then, 4 months after the program has ended, what do you see the results? What's the, success rate?
So a lot of the students that we see, for the most part, come back with new tools and strategies. The classroom has a whole host of tools and strategies that they can use. And our SELC teams are really good at keeping in touch with the schools if they need something and following the students.
Yeah, and I think that's also where my role comes in. So I also provide in-services for those homeschool teams. So really, when I support our SELC homeschool teams, I am talking about the SEL strategies and skills and curriculum that our SELC programs are using. And then our end goal is to transfer those over to our homeschool teams. So our homeschool teams are also learning in this process, and we're making those connections, like Sheryl mentioned, through ongoing communication with not only the teachers, families, and the end goal really is for these students to be successful back in the regular classrooms, because our programs are so great. They're smaller groups. Our students do thrive. We do see really great improvements.
They take the tools and transfer them to their homeschool classroom. And we've had many homeschools who refer other students once they've seen how successful the previous students have been.
Because you have a cohort of, maximum of 10, and then you're teaching the kids and the school community, their teachers and beyond, of how to use social emotional learning.
10 students and 3 staff.
Right.
So it's well supported.
That is a very well supported ratio. SELC is for primary students, grades 1 to 3. What about students outside of this age group? How are they supported?
So we have a variety of other social emotional programs geared for our older students. So we have Excel, which is Excellence in Social Emotional Learning program, and it provides an integrated and supportive setting for students in grades 4 to 6 who require intensive support in social emotional learning and executive functioning. Alderwood is our interagency program with the Vancouver School Board, the Children's Foundation, the Ministry of Children and Family Development, and Child and Youth Mental Health. It's a 1-year program for students aged 8 to 12, so grades 3 to 7. Social Development is our secondary version of SELC, so it's designed as an integrated cohort for students who may be fragile or anxious or internalizers. There is an SEL component and executive functioning supports. There's a junior program designed for grades 8 and 9, and a senior for grades 10 to 12.
Those are a lot of programs and also a lot of acronyms. If families wanted to find out more information, where could they go to find that?
They can go to their school, classroom teachers, resource teachers, administration. They all have access to our programs and what the descriptions and what's available.
I also know that on the district website, so vsb.bc.ca, under student learning, all those programs and a short description of what they are there. So parents can find some more information about that. I want to go back to SELC and maybe this also applies to the other programs where you're pulling students out of their homeschool into a program. What are the concerns here of taking a child away from their regular setting and putting them into a new one? How do you handle that challenge?
So for SELC, it's a very short term. So it's a focused short-term intervention, but there's always the connection to the homeschool maintained. The SELC teacher often sends weekly kind of reports on what the kids have been doing, sends parents pictures and the tools and lessons that were learned for the week. So there's that ongoing communication and connection. Then they are supported back as they take those tools and transfer those strategies. For Excel, which is the grade 4 to 6 version, it is a different type of a program in that they go to Excel from the end of September till spring break. Then after spring break, they return to their homeschool and they are supported back by the Excel team to transfer their skills and strategies in their classroom environment.
So a teacher is with them to help them transition back to being with their regular peers.
Absolutely. And there's visits.
Mm-hmm. And I think even I was previously a program teacher, not SELC, a different program in the district. But I know parents always have that, oh, I'm not sure, like, because of that. And really, when I think part of it is making that relationship first and connection. So as the classroom teacher, I would meet with the parents, and this is how my program runs. This is why our students are here, and I teach to the needs that they, that they relate to their learning needs, and just reassuring them. And, it's not, I'm selling my program or anything, but this is why it might be a great fit for them. And I can say, as soon as I, as the classroom teacher, met with parents and reassured them, and they also that like stress, like, oh, maybe this is the right fit. And we see that in our SELC programs because we do open houses. The classroom teachers, our SELC teams would do the open houses and have parents come in and, see the classroom environment, go through the daily routine. And just, I think at that point, a lot of the parents are like, oh, this might be, this might be a good fit for our child.
I think, any amount of change is difficult. And then when you're talking about change for your kids, which are so used to a routine, that's scary. And that's also the reason why this podcast is important, is to share information of all the great programs we have. Like, we can only say we have great programs so many times, but you need to understand why and to provide that information in that context. So then that leads to my next question is, why is it so important now more than ever to dedicate attention to building students' social, emotional, and behavior skills?
It's a very, very good question. And I'm going to use the now post-pandemic. These skills are especially important because research shows that the well-being of our students have actually decreased since the pandemic. So these are really proactive approaches to supporting our students' mental health and well-being. And like I mentioned earlier, these are foundational skills that students are learning to support them for the rest of their lives. And I'm going to go back to research. And there are positive short-term and long-term outcomes of teaching social emotional learning in the classroom. So some short-term outcomes, students are feeling like having an improved attitude towards themselves, towards others, and learning in school in general. So they're enjoying coming to school. They say they feel safe and comfortable to learn. It's an environment set up for them to thrive and feel engaged and participate in learning. And then some of the long-term outcomes that have come out in research is overall an increase in social behavior, fewer conduct problems, less emotional distress, and overall actually improved academic performance.
So actually being proactive early on is beneficial for the child, as they apply these skills as they get older. And I 100% agree with you. It's so important for children to enjoy school, because once they enjoy school, they will love to learn. And that's, really it is setting them up for the next, 12 years or into post-secondary of the love to learn and to continuously grow and be better. Thank you so much, Deanna and Sheryl, for providing that insight on social emotional learning in the district. It's really important to recognize that the overall development and well-being of students extends past academic learning, as we talked about today. A holistic approach, and one that caters to the unique needs of every student, is necessary to set students up for success today and long after their time within the VSB. For families, if you're thinking about if your child needs a program, please talk to your classroom teacher, your principal and vice principal. It doesn't have to be when they're in trouble. That's why you talk to them. Be proactive, talk to them in advance to help your child, help set them up for success.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gianna.
Special thanks to music teacher Mr. Bonnell and the Nightingale Elementary students for the original theme song. Episodes are released at the end of every month. And if you have an idea for a podcast episode, let us know by emailing us at communications@vsb.bc.ca. And don't forget to subscribe to VSB After the Bell on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
With the VSB.